beautiful and sweet. 'Cause I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fall in love. Okay, so we are going to talk about Unit 5, and here we are going to talk about issues in testing and measurement. So we created a test, right? There were certain things we did, and we talked about what is it, what is psychometrics, what is psychological assessment, and we talked about how to create those, test or skills. And also we talked about what applications of psychological tests. Now in Unit 5 we are going to talk about issues in testing and management. So there is going to have some issues. So let's talk about that. The first is response bias and response set. So response bias, this happens when answers are influenced by factors unrelated to actual question. Imagine someone answering a survey about happiness while they are in a bad mood. Their mood affects the response, not the actual question. So there are different questions, right? There are different items. So factors such as mood can influence the way you answer to this question. So that is what it is, response bias. It is this happens when answers are influenced by factors unrelated to the actual question. Imagine someone answering a survey about happiness while they are in bed. Their mood affects the response, not the actual question. Unrelated to. So response bias means answers are influenced by factors which are unrelated to actual questions. So there are different types of it. So let's talk about first social desirability bias. When people answer in ways they think are more socially acceptable, rather than being honest. For example, if a survey asks, do you always follow traffic rules? Most people might say yes, even they don't, just to seem good. So social influence is there, and that can create a bias. To be socially desirable, you may answer incorrectly. So let's talk about another bias, which is acquiescence bias. This is when someone tends to agree with a statement regardless of the content. So if given statements like I enjoy social event and I dislike social event, they might say agree to both. So the tendency to agree to all the questions, even if they are negative or positive, they may give the same response. That is acquiescence bias. Let's talk about third response bias, which is extreme response bias. When people go for extreme options, there are various options in a question, right? There could be strongly agree, and strongly disagree, and strongly disagree. So people tend to only select the extreme options. They are only selecting the extreme option. That is extreme response bias. Central tendency bias. So this is the opposite of extreme. So they will choose this central. They are not going to go to extremes, but they are going to tend towards giving the answer towards the central things, such as they may choose agree or disagree to most of the questions, not going towards strongly agree or strongly disagree. So that is central tendency bias. The opposite, some avoid extreme answers and stick to neutral or middle options to play it safe. So that is all about response bias. Let's talk about response set. This is a consistent pattern of answering that ignores the actual question content. Consistent pattern. So there is a pattern, consistent pattern of answering, that ignores the actual question content. So consistently you are giving an answer which ignores the actual question content, which ignores the content of the question. And it's like someone who always says yes on questionnaire without reading the statement. So that yes, so he's always saying yes, which is consistent pattern. Which is if someone says yes on a questionnaire without reading the statement, that is response set. So this is about consistent pattern of giving an answer, without or ignoring the actual question content, ignoring the content of the question. There is a consistent pattern of giving such answers. So let's talk about the first one, which is semantics. The way a question is worded can influence answer. Example, do you agree that hard work always leads to success? Might lead people to agree due to social desirability, even if they don't fully believe it. The wording, how do we use the words? For example, if I say I love psychology, and if there is I like psychology. So although it may have a same meaning, but the choice of word we use, that can really influence. Love may seem more extreme, or like may seem less like the love. So that can influence people. So that is all about semantic. It's about wording. Wording can influence the way people respond to that questionnaire. Next is acquiescence or compliance, which we also talked about in response bias. It's also in response set. The tendency to agree with the statement regardless of their content. Okay, we already talked about it. So even that is positively or negatively framed, and they may choose agree. The tendency to agree with the statement, that is acquiescence or compliance. Here is example: say yes to both. I enjoy being around people and I prefer being alone. So at one they should agree and at one they should disagree, but they are agreeing on both, and that is a set of pattern, agreeing to every questionnaire, or agreeing the tendency to agree, the tendency to comply, which is one of the type of response set. The next one is impulsion. Okay, next one is impulsion. Answering without thinking means answering impulsively without even thinking carefully, often due to pressure or impatience. Okay, it may be because of pressure or impatience. Example: rapidly checking answer in an online quiz without reading the question properly. So there are questionnaires and just seeing it thoroughly, without reading it thoroughly, just looking at it and they are just responding to it. So that is impulsion. They are not thinking carefully about it and just giving the answers. So next one is falsification, giving dishonest answer, either to look better or hide something. Lying on a personality test to seem more extroverted during a job. Okay, it's like giving the dishonest answer. Okay, false answer. Why? They can do it to either look better or to hide something. Okay, so in the job, like in job, extroverted personality is preferred. Then they may be an introvert, they may choose extrovert so that they can pass that interview or that test. Okay, the next is speed versus accuracy, prioritizing speed over careful answering. Example: finishing a time test quickly but making many mistakes. Okay, if there is a certain time given to you, then you may just respond to questions quickly without even looking it properly, or if you are hurried, like you may have to go home, then you will just respond to that question very quickly, and that may create a problem. And that is what speed versus accuracy. If you choose speed, then accuracy may be deteriorate, or what can we say, the accuracy may not be that great. The set of gambles. Okay, guessing answers when unsure. Example: selecting random answer in multiple choice test without thinking. So it's like Jai Mata Di and choosing one answer. It may be because they don't understand the question, so they don't know what to respond, so they just guess, or they just guess and they just choose one option, which is also one of the types of response set. Okay, so we talked about response bias and response set and the types. So let's talk about the principles of response set. So consistency, maintaining similar answer throughout the text, sometimes even when inappropriate. Okay, in response set there is consistency. So maintaining similar answer, okay, giving like a similar answer even when inappropriate, even like it should be different but they are giving a similar answer. So there is a consistency in response set, in the way people respond. Okay, there is ambiguity, unclear questions increases the chance of biased response. Okay, unclear question, then they don't know what to respond, so that may lead to a biased response. Structure and difficulty, poor structured or overly difficult test can lead to impulsive or false answer. Okay, if there is no fixed structure and the test is very difficult, which can make people feel very impulsive, and they may not give answers without thinking a lot about it, and they may also give false answer. So it should be made in a way that's easy and that's well structured, so that it would be easy for people to respond and they don't feel like being impulsive or not. This is something that we need to keep in mind, looking at these biases and looking at this response set of patterns in which people answer the questionnaire. We can create a proper kind of skill. This is important. We need to know about these biases so that we create a better structured, not very difficult, and like the best scale possible. So that is about the issues, okay, response bias and response set, and we talked about it in detail. Now we are going to go into next topic, that is cross-cultural issues. Okay, let's change the color. Let's select something else, maybe green. Okay, cross-cultural issues, test equivalence and measurement bias. Okay, now we are going to talk about cross-cultural issues. So there are different cultures and it can lead to issues. Okay, and in it we are going to talk about test equivalence and measurement bias. So what is it? Let's talk about that. Test equivalence ensures that test measures the same thing across different culture. Example, a depression scale should reflect the same symptoms in Nepal and in US. Okay, so if there is a scale on depression, so in Nepal and US it should measure depression, right? It should measure the symptoms of depression. Like in US it's measuring the symptoms of depression, in Nepal it's measuring something else, maybe symptoms of anxiety, then that scale is not good. So that is like test equivalence. There should be equivalence. Okay, ensure that tests measure the same thing across different culture. Okay, types of equivalence. So let's talk about different types of. First is construct equivalence. The concept being measured is understood the same way in different culture. Okay, the concept should be understood same way in different culture. For example, in Nepal and US, the construct or factors or dimensions, okay, being measured is understood. Okay, depression is understood same way in Nepal and US. You have to make sure. Example, intelligence might mean problem solving in one culture, okay, and social skills in another. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so we should the concept should be seen similarly in different cultures. Second is measurement unit equivalence. The scales or unit of measurement are same. Example, using 1-5 Likert scale in both culture, where 5 means strongly agree. Okay, it should be same. So measurement unit should be equivalent. It should be same. Okay. Then the third one is full score equivalence. Score can be directly compared. Example, if a person scores 80 on US test and another scores 80 in Japan, they should have similar abilities. Okay, it should mean a same thing. Okay, if there is a differences, then what happens is test equivalence is not mentioned. If the construct means two different things, then there will not be test equivalence. If measurement unit is not same, then the test will not be equivalent, and if the interpretation or the meaning of the score is different, then it's not also equivalent. Okay, so that is about test equivalence. Now let's talk about another thing in cross-cultural issues. Second one is measurement bias. Okay, occurs when a test unfairly disadvantages a certain group. Okay, measurement bias. There is a bias in measurement. So if the test unfairly, okay, disadvantages a certain group, if there is a disadvantage to a certain group or a culture, then that is when we say there is a measurement bias. Okay, types of biases. Let's talk about types of measurement bias. Construct bias. The concept itself varies between culture. The idea of independence might have different meaning in collectivistic versus individualistic culture. So if there is the concept itself, okay, or the construct itself, it has a different meaning, then that will definitely lead to bias. If people understand depression differently on different culture, then they may respond differently, so which will lead to bias. Let's talk about another one, which is method bias. Bias due to how the test is administered. Example, conducting a written test in a culture where oral communication is more valued. Okay, so the methods, what type of method we use, written or oral. So in culture where people are quite comfortable with oral language and not so with written, then they may not respond in a correct way. Okay, so that should also be considered. Next is administration bias. Issues during testing, like a distracting environment or differences in test instruction. One group takes the test in quiet room and another in noisy one. Okay, if there are differences in the environment, okay, then that is obviously going to create biases. So this is also we need to understand. Item bias. Specific questions are unfair to a group. Okay, item, so unfair to a group. A question about snow might confuse someone from tropical region. Okay, so people who live in a place, say a very hilly region, they may understand about what snow is, right? They have seen it, they have felt it, they have experiences with it, whereas the people living in Tarai region, they may not know what snow is. They may have never even seen snow in their whole life. So having a questionnaire about snow, then the way they answer may be different because they don't have that experiences or knowledge about it. So we should also consider that. Okay, approaches to using okay. So that was about measurement bias. We talked about test equivalence, we talked about measurement bias. Now let's talk about approaches to using scales in different cultures. So there are different cultures, so how can we use scales in different cultures? Let's talk about it. First is adoption, using the test as it is, best for statistical comparison. Example, administering the same IQ test globally. It's using the same test, okay, same test made in one culture, like same test, using the test as it is, okay, in different culture. The same test is practiced on different culture. Okay, that's what adoption is, to adopt the same test as it is. Okay, then the example is of IQ test. So intelligence is quite similar in all cultures, so as it is. Okay, that is adoption. Next is adaptation, changing some parts to fit cultural context. Okay, changing some parts, okay, maybe some words in that questions. Modifying culturally specific question in personality test. Okay, in personality test or in any test, there may be certain questionnaires that may not be understood or be relevant to certain culture, so they will change that questionnaire to be relevant to that culture, and that is adaptation, to adapt to culture, okay, to the cultural context. Next is cross-cultural adaptation, creating a new culturally equivalent test. Example, developing a unique mental health scale for a specific cultural group. Okay, for Nepal there is their own depression test, okay, maybe in Nepali, and in US they have their own, say, depression test, and that is in English. So we are creating what, a new, okay, culturally equivalent test. Okay, so that is cross-cultural adaptation. So this is also adaptation, but this is cross-cultural. Okay, here we only change some questions or some words, etc. Here we'll change the entire scale. We'll make a new scale, okay, test, okay, for that cultural group. So we talked about approaches to using scales. How can we use a scale? We can use this scale as it is, okay, that is adoption, to adopt, okay, in various cultures. And also there is the second one, it is adaptation, to adapt to a new cultural group. In adaptation, what we'll do, we might change some questions or we might change some words, etc. In cross-cultural adaptation, we are going to make the test entirely different, okay, which should be culturally equivalent. It should be equivalent in the culture we are going to perform that test. So there is a recommendation, and what does it say? Use adoption for data comparison. Use adaptation when cultural relevance is key. Okay, so adoption is for data comparison, to compare, okay, between different culture, giving same scale. Okay, we are comparing how people from different culture respond to it. Okay, for comparison. For statistics is also written here, best for statistical comparison. Okay, and what about adaptation? It's when we need cultural relevancy, means where we want the scale to measure things properly in different culture. That is when we need to do adaptation, when we prioritize culture, okay, and that is when we use adaptation. Okay, so that was the recommendation. So we may use adaptation to know how different people are from different culture. Okay, and in adaptation we need to test it. We need to make sure that the scale test performed in that culture is good. Okay, that is when you use adaptation. Okay, so that was about two of the issues. Okay, response bias, response set. That was one issue, and another one was cultural issues. Now next, third is test adaptation. So we talked about test adaptation, right? Adaptation. So translation and back translation. So how is test adaptation done? Let's talk about that. Okay, Adopting tastes for different cultures involves careful steps to maintain meaning and accuracy. Okay, there are different steps, so let's talk about those steps. Okay, so first phase, okay, there are different phases, okay, or steps. So first is clarify the concept. Ensure that the core idea remains consistent across culture. Example, defining stress similarly in all contexts. Sorry. Ensure the core idea remains consistent across the culture. Example, defining stress similarly in all contexts. Okay, so if we are trying to measure stress, we should make sure that stress means same in, let's say, US and Nepal. That is the first thing, clarify the concept. The second step is forward translation. So we are going to translate in a forward way, right? Translate the text into new language. Okay, translate the text into new. Example is translating an English anxiety scale into Nepali. So there is English anxiety scale, we'll transfer it to Nepali. So then there is backward translation, which means now we have already translated. Okay, another translator translate it back into original language to check for accuracy. So another translator, what he does it, so now English anxiety scale is transferred to Nepali. Now what happens is another translator will translate this Nepali back to English. Now why do we do that? To catch discrepancies, to catch whether translation is good or not, like whether same meaning is there or not. Like when we translate to Nepali, we'll look for either same meaning is there or not. Then again, when we translate it to English, we have to make sure this English and this English, it should be giving same meaning. Then only it is a good translation. So that is the reason we use forward translation as well as backward translation. And also we have to make sure that translation is done by the person who understands the culture, who understands the language as well. Okay, not that we give it to translate to someone else from some different culture who does not even understand that language properly. Okay, we need to make sure that as well. So phase 4 is expert review. Now expert will review, the expert evaluate translation of cultural and conceptual accuracy. Not just cultural but also conceptual, whether it's trying to tell you the concept accurately or not, that is also considered. Okay, and phase 5 is cognitive briefing. Test the translated version with people from target culture to check if questions make sense. Okay, we need to check it, we need to test it to the people. Okay, that is cognitive brief reading. Phase 6 is proofreading. Correct any errors in translation. Okay, proofreading, grammars or formatting. So if there are problems in translation, grammar or formatting, we need to proofread it. Okay, that is the phase 6. And 7 is psychometric testing or validation. Check the test's reliability, okay, consistency and validity, accuracy in the new culture. This should also be done. Ensuring Nepali version of stress scale measures stress reliably. There should be reliable. Okay, this should be reliable. If you are measuring time, it should be able to measure time, which is valid, and it should do it in the same way when it is administered different time. When it is administered in different time, it should be reliable as well. It should always be consistent. Okay, and phase 8, report and publication. Document and publish the process and result for transparency. Okay, we need to document as well as publish the process as well. Okay, and the result as well for transparency. Cross-cultural adaptation needs. Ensure both culture understand and statistical data align. Okay, this also adapt language, context and content while keeping the construct intact. Okay, that was about it. Okay, that was about it. So this is what like a summary. Okay, what we need is we need cultural understanding, and statistical data also should be same, like it should align, and language, context, content should actually reflect what construct we are measuring, and it should be same. So that was about it, and that's all about the issues in testing and management. We have completed the unit 5 as well, so there's only one unit that's left, and that's about the science of psychological measurement. It's not tough, but there are no examples, so I need to rewrite the notes because it's just about definition. So I need to make sure there are examples so that I can explain you through examples. So thanks for having me. Have a wonderful day. Peace.